All right, so in the interest of full disclosure, I completely missed out on the hype train for 28 Days Later back in 2002. Not because I was a child back then, I was a full-grown man, but I was living in Africa at the time. And according to Box Office Mojo, the film has never premiered anywhere on that entire continent for some reason. Sure, Chile and New Zealand deserve the movie that reignited zombie films for an entirely new generation, but not Namibia, not Zimbabwe, not Angola, not Kenya, not Cote d'Ivoire. Come on, we were so short-sighted in the 2000s. Though I did see the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire in films in 2002 while in South Africa, so maybe it's just a matter of people in Africa preferring superhero films over zombie ones. This deserves more research. Maybe it will be the subject of a future video. Anyway, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland teaming up to give us a zombie story that isn't technically a zombie story should have been enough for me to check it out sometime in the last 23 years, but I never did until I saw some hype around the upcoming 28 Years Later, and a subscriber told me to check out Days Later because it was definitely worth my time. And how right he was! 28 Days Later is the story of a bike courier named Jim, played by a young Cillian Murphy, who wakes up alone in a hospital bed in London, entirely naked for some reason. Are hospital patients in a coma often left nude in their beds in England? Who knows? Jim is understandably concerned when he wakes up in what appears to be an abandoned hospital, and his confusion only grows as he wanders the entirely empty streets, no sign of anyone anywhere. The movie cost £8 million to make, returning an impressive £84 million worldwide, and I get the feeling a huge portion of that budget was spent clearing the streets around Buckingham Palace and Lambeth for big, sprawling shots of nothing but a tiny Jim wandering about, scavenging product-placed cans of Pepsi and distinctly cash, which, even at this early point in the movie, feels like an empty gesture. Anyway, it turns out that Jim is not alone in the city, and he spends the next 2 hours on an adventure of horror, punctuated by moments of serenity and beauty, in a zombie movie that understands and nails every beat and quality required from the genre. I really like that 28 Days Later is a zombie movie without any zombies at all. The monsters are regular people who have contracted a virus that makes them insane with rage, not people who have died and come back from the dead as shambling corpses hungry for brains. The point of zombie films is not the undead aspect, but, importantly, that fellow humans are coming to kill you, and they're different and mindless now. There's definitely a lot of political allegory at work here, mind you. The Last of Us did the same thing, making their zombies people infected with a mushroom fungus. No undead part of that story at all. And while 28 Days Later didn't invent the fast zombie, Reddit says 1985's Return of the Living Dead did that, it sure helped popularize it, and future zombie movie properties like The Walking Dead cite 28 Days as a specific influence. These zombies are all very fast and aggressive. Another thing that makes these zombies not zombies is that you can kill them the same way you can kill people. There's no requirement to chop their heads off, like other zombie movies show. Shoot them in the chest, stab them in the neck, chop an arm off, and they'll die all the same. They're a constant threat throughout the film and are very effective at taking a scene and jacking it to a 10 out of 10 on the chaos scale as soon as you hear them coming. Boyle's filming style is very creative, and I found myself actively noticing and being impressed by certain shots throughout my viewing experience. What's weird, though, is that I noticed them so much it felt like the movie was an amateur film, where the inexperienced director was trying really hard to impress people with these cool ideas for shots. But this was Boyle's 5th directed movie. So I don't get it. Why? I guess this is just his filming style then, huh? In general, the style of constant close-ups on the characters, Dutch angles being employed throughout, and the extremely limited number of people in the cast make it feels like a very excellently done student film. And maybe that was the intention? It almost feels like a found footage movie at times. I'm not trying to say any of this makes it a bad movie, but it's an aspect that can't be ignored and definitely makes it one of the most unique viewing experiences I've had recently. The casting is very interesting too. As mentioned before, a young Cillian Murphy stars and does a great job as the overwhelmed Jim. Naomi Harris's Selena is maybe the best acted role in the movie, with Brendan Gleeson and Christopher Eccleston being nice surprises when they show up too. Megan Byrne's performance as Hannah was rough at some points, but pretty okay in others. Child acting is usually a struggle in film and TV, and this is really no exception. Garland makes sure the movie isn't just a relentless stress fest, and inserts scenes of peace to offset the chaos. One such scene happens during a road trip, where our heroes are munching on some recently acquired canned beans and apples, and Brendan Gleeson notices a herd of horses galloping freely in the distance. There's no story purpose here. The horses aren't infected with the rage virus, a possibility the characters seem to know is real, despite us never seeing an infected animal outside of the opening scene. And they aren't ambushed while taking in the scenery. It's just a nice time found family spends together out in nature. Overall, 28 Days Later is a very well-paced, exciting, and heartfelt examination of post-apocalyptic England, with enough mystery and drama to keep your interest beyond, "Oh no, zombies are scary!" I give it 2 thumbs up. It only showed up on digital streaming for rent or purchase in 2024, so go watch it if you haven't. Now you have no excuse. Now, on to spoiler territory. You've been warned. Go watch it and then come back and read this or listen to this stuff later. I love the idea that the rage virus might entirely be contained on the island of Great Britain. When it's shown how fast the virus acts in the opening scene, I immediately recognized there was no way this could spread worldwide. For a disease to spread to that level, it has to incubate for a while, and it can't kill the host fast. For you to turn into a rage monster immediately upon contact with the rage blood from another rage monster, just no one's going to let a rage monster on a plane or a boat. And even if they manage to get on, there's no way they'd make it to another country. The rage virus can only spread on foot, and that limits it immensely if it breaks out of England. That's why when the Chaplin character towards the end of the film mentions planes are still flying overhead, and then our characters see a couple of them later, it sparks this fantastic idea to the audience that the rest of the world just quarantined the island and let all the British citizens fend for themselves. This is seriously dark and kind of hilarious stuff. I really loved the introduction of Frank to this story. The small scene where we see all the buckets he's placed on the roof of his apartment building to catch the rain is fantastic, as he laments about how they've gone 10 days without rain in England, and also the tiny detail that he set up a sheet to catch condensation in the air because he saw it on TV once, but he can't make it work. That's also brilliant. Frank's just a random guy who has managed to survive an apocalypse. He's not an expert in any of this. Just a dude trying to make his way with any ingenuity he can muster. The fact that he included laundry baskets on the roof with their aerated sides along with the other buckets and pans is also very funny. Though I suppose even an inch of water you can collect in the bottom of a laundry basket is useful. Since every good zombie movie also is required to introduce the concept of man's inhumanity to man on top of all the monster stuff, I was suspicious of Christopher Eccleston and his unruly squad of soldiers from the start. If they've been broadcasting about a safe zone over radio for weeks, where are the other refugees they've taken in? When Jim, Selena, and Hannah arrived at the mansion, I was immediately struck by how they're the only non-military personnel there. To be fair, Frank had just died, and they were all very shaken up emotionally. But the reveal that Eccleston and co. are just murdering every dude that shows up in their search for some women they can then use as breeding stock wasn't surprising, but it was definitely gross. The writing decision to make the soldiers unruly and unprofessional in pretty much every way helps clue the audience in on something's not right, so the reveal feels earned. I'm not a huge fan of how Jim the bike courier turns into Rambo for the climactic scene, but it is pretty visually striking to see a super pale, shirtless Cillian Murphy vaulting walls and escaping out windows while getting the drop on enemy soldiers. It was a pretty smart move, freeing Mailer to go ham on the soldiers in the house, too. It felt like an earned and reasonable victory for Jim and Selena overall. A drugged-out Hannah somehow knowing that if she reverses the car just like this, she'll bring it to a position where Mailer will drag Eccleston out the back window was a bit eye-rolly, but not too bad. It happens pretty fast. At the end, Jim gets shot, and in a few rejected endings I researched, he dies at the end. But what they decided on to end it is perfect, in my opinion. Now look, we've talked a lot about endings are hard, and I was worried how this one would choose to wrap things up. The idea that a plane is flying by their house at low altitude on a consistent basis links back to the idea that the world outside the island is continuing on as normal, but also makes us wonder if anyone really cares about rescuing the survivors. So Lena's final, "Do you think he saw us this time?" is a wonderfully ambiguous ending. Is this the first time they've managed to get their giant hello out there for the pilot to see? Is this just the latest version, and they've been trying to get his attention for months now, only to be ignored every time? Who knows? Let's talk about it. I love movies that engender conversation, and this definitely does that. Anyway, I'll definitely have to check out 28 Weeks Later and then 28 Years Later when it hits theaters later this year. That's all I've got for today, but as always, recommend future movies and TV shows you want me to talk about, and you take care of yourself.